I'm making this video for those who maybe are a little like me. What do you mean? Well, back when the Lord began to teach me about the Great Week, 1,000-year days, the obvious conclusion is if he's coming at the last day, as he said, to raise up those of us who believe on him. And that last day is this last 1,000-year day of the Great Week, also known as, or AKA, the Day of the Lord. Does that not tell us, at least approximately, when he's coming back? Obviously it does. Now there's a lot that goes around this and with it, because that does not mean that we're here for the last few years of the Antichrist, but I can't get into that right now. Instead, I want to make a video that maybe assures your heart that we can at least know the approximate time of his return, so that if we say he's coming soon, it means something. It's not just someone talking out of their head, but that it's scripturally based. I remember when I was learning about the Great Week, that was my first question. I thought we weren't supposed to know anything about when you're coming back, Lord. You know, I didn't have one of those bumper stickers on my car. In case of rapture, this car will be unmanned, but I could have. That was our common understanding, that he would come at the surprise of everybody, even, now that I think of it, it sounds foolish, but even watchful believers. So my first question, and that's how the Lord taught me. I just would come to him with questions. I bombarded him with questions. He doesn't mind. He says, seek and he will answer. Knock, the door will be opened. I mean, if you seek, you'll find. So I just took him at his word. My question was, I thought we weren't supposed to know anything, and yet the Great Week and the revelation of it seems to contradict that. So I thought I would make a few videos if necessary, or one, however long it takes. I'll try to keep things short, on what he showed me, what he taught me, what he responded to me with, that allowed me to embrace this revelation so that we can know, so that we can see the day approaching. You know, a bride, he doesn't just come as a bridegroom to her window in the middle of the night and kind of break in and steal her away. He's more of a gentleman than that. And so in the Jewish customs of marriage and weddings, when the bridegroom would say to a bride who has accepted his proposal of marriage that he is going away, and he's going to prepare the place for them to live. And when he has everything ready and prepared, when it's the right time, he will come again and receive her to himself. That's what Jesus said in John chapter 14, and it's all based around the customs of Jewish marriage and weddings. What people don't necessarily always understand is that when it is time, or the time is nearing for him to come, as he comes, he brings a great, kind of like a parade of people with him to come and escort his bride back to his Father's house. But before he gets there, he sends people ahead to announce and give her fair warning that his coming is drawing near and it's time to really get ready. Adorn yourself with your jewels. Get prepared. He doesn't just leave it to the last minute and sneak up on her. He's, again, more of a gentleman than that. So consider this. Consider what he's called me to do, my part in the body of Christ, added to your part. My part is to go up ahead and tell people he's coming soon. But first of all, I need to make a few comments, because we have muddied the waters, so to speak, when it comes to his return, so that the issue of how much we can or cannot know becomes quite complicated. It doesn't need to be. It should be and is really simple. But we have really, as I said, muddied the waters. Because of that, you have to provide disclaimers. So my first disclaimer is this: I am in no way trying to set a calendar date for the Lord's return. So just rest assured in that. We're discussing what we can know so that we can have an approximate understanding of how close we are. We can know, as it says in the parable of the fig tree, which, by the way, is in the same teaching in which we supposedly have all these prohibitions that you can't know. But in the same teaching, he speaks to our generation here at the end of the age and says, basically, you need to learn a parable about a fig tree. Why a fig tree? Because it will teach you how you can watch for the signs and thereby know when my coming is so near, it's even at the door. Oh, you mean we can know that? Yeah, I wouldn't give you this parable if it wasn't true. So in light of that, we have to find a way to understand these other statements that seem to say you cannot know, that put up a no trespassing sign whenever we come near the idea of broaching the subject of whether we can know the approximate time at least. I mean, nobody's interested in setting a calendar date, especially when you know that his coming is linked with this last great day of the week, the day of the Lord, which has plenty of signs. So that we're not talking about a coming, a rapture that is signless, as so many times we have taught in the past. It's not a signless return or rapture. It's not one that can happen at any moment. You have to wait for the right time, the chronological order of this great week when you have fulfilled 6 prior days and now you've at the 7th, the last, that's when he comes. And you would also have to understand from other scriptures, which we're not going to go into in this lesson. I try to put them up on our channel as we go. You would have to know that when he comes in the rapture, the Antichrist has been on the earth, but he hasn't really done anything that would cause great alarm to us as believers. That happens after the rapture, and then he has several years left. He has 3.5 years left after the rapture, and that's where he imposes the mark of the beast and raises up through the false prophet the image of the beast, and all of that goes on. So this is not a rapture that's at the very end and you have to go through all of these things. No, you're not going to go through the mark of the beast, the image of the beast, or the wrath of God in that day, the trumpets, the bowls that we find in the book of Revelation. So that's my disclaimer, okay? It's based on that we're now can start looking at how much can we know? What does it really say? So first of all, let's just take some of these things from the Olivet Discourse, because that's where all of these supposed prohibitions come from. And the first one is perhaps the most well-known. It's the unknown day and hour. As he mentioned it in contrast with the days of Noah. You might be wondering, why did he do that? Why did he speak of an unknown day and hour, or a day and hour known only to the Godhead, the Father, and not even to the Son while he was on the earth, limited because he had set aside his glory, not known to the angels? Why did he contrast this unknown day and hour or time with the days of Noah? It's a good question. If you just take it out of its setting, out of its context, as you've probably tired of hearing this, but people say if you take the text out of context, you're left with a con. And we have been conned, not intentionally, not maliciously, but nevertheless, we have been left with an imprecise view of his return and how much we can or cannot know. So let's begin in Matthew 24 and verse 34. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away until all things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So let's take a moment. Let's park for a minute and unpack this. But what day and hour is he talking about? The day and hour of his return in the rapture? Or is he talking about when heaven and earth pass away? In context, it points back to that. Heaven and earth will pass away, but, see, there's the connecting conjunction, but of that day and time, no one knows. Why not? Because when heaven and earth pass away, what happens? God the Father says, I will make all things new. There will be a new heavens, a new earth. All of the old will pass away. Now, this new heavens and this new earth in the scriptures, they have a better word than we do for forever. They call it the day of eternity, or the day of perpetuity, or the day that never ends. That's this unknown day. Let me say it like this. They spoke of eternity and forever in terms of a day that would last without end. So that's why it's the unknown day and hour, because when you come to the end of the great week, 7 days, then what? Do you start over? No. Do you go to an 8th day? Not really. But if you take the number 8 and flip it on its side so that you have the symbol for eternity, that's what you have. The last 7th day actually becomes, when it's over, an eternal day that never ends, but it will be in the context of a new heavens and a new earth. And the reason that the angels, that no one on earth, no man, not even Jesus in his limited capacity, I dare say now he can, because he's part of the Godhead and his glory has been restored. But no one but the Godhead can understand eternity future, can see all of eternity, can view it, can grasp what it will be like. In other words, it's not that we don't know when it will come or happen, it's that we don't know what it will be like. Who does? Who can fathom the glory of what he has prepared for us for all of eternity? That's what he's saying. Now, if we keep reading, we'll find out that this first part about the eternal day was a setup, because verse 37 connects it with the word but, and it says, but as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. This means that his coming is not going to be like the unknown day and time of future eternity that no one can understand. But instead, his coming is going to be like the days of Noah, which represent a time, an event that was known in advance by the righteous. Not just that it was coming, but when it was coming. Have you thought about that? I mean, the flood victims were surprised, but that's only half of the story. The other side of the coin is that Noah and his family were not surprised. In fact, they not only knew that the flood was coming, but when it was coming. If you don't believe me, just go back and check out the story. Jesus knew this. He knew that his disciples would eventually check these things out. And so while he couldn't tell them everything, he could at least point them in the right direction. So in the story of Noah, we find out that he knew And he knew more than just that something was coming, but he knew the timing of it, the timetable, or as I like to say, the chronos of the event. Here's what he knew. Genesis 6:3 says, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Personally, I don't believe he was rearranging the lifespans of humanity. I believe he was telling them, because of your violence and the fact that all of your thoughts are so evil, if I don't cut this off, no flesh will be saved, and the plan of redemption will be spoiled. So I must do this." And so basically he was notifying the inhabitants of the earth at that time, you have 120 years left. Then Noah comes along. I believe he was privy to that information, so that he knew he had basically 120 years to prepare this ark. It probably took quite a while to build because it was just him and his sons as far as we know. But then we also know this, Genesis 6:18, that God spoke to Noah and said, "I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, your sons' wives with you." So Noah knew he was not building this ark for future generations. He knew that it was something he and his family would use to be saved from this catastrophic event that was coming. So basically, we could say it like this. He knew that the flood was coming in his lifetime, and if Jesus likened his return to the days of Noah, can we not then assume correctly that we can also know that his coming, that event that's on the horizon, will be in our lifetime? If Noah knew, isn't that the whole point of this contrast? You may not know, like the unknown day and hour that's not known by anybody on the earth, but you can concerning my coming. You can know like Noah, if you will just watch, if you will pay attention. And isn't that what the message was in his teaching? Paying attention, watching, investigating. Watch the fig tree, investigate. Keep an eye on these things. If you will keep alert, you will know. That's the message, not that you can't ever know, as we have been taught. So let's go on. Genesis 7:4 is highly significant, because now the Lord comes to him after the 120 years are almost over, after he knows it's coming in his lifetime. Probably by now he's starting to see the animals start coming. There's the sign supernaturally of the animals right there. But Genesis 7:4 says, "For after 7 more days, I will cause it to rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and I will destroy," and so forth. In other words, God's keeping him in the loop. He now approaches him and says, "You've got 7 days left." If his return will be as it was in the days of Noah. I mean, we compare the days of Noah and we allow for that the earth will be filled with violence and all of the evil and so forth. Why don't we allow for the fact that we too will know when his return is very, very near, like Noah knew? 7 days, that's all? Yeah, you got 7 days. Will it be like that for us, for the Noahs of our generation? Well, according to Jesus, it will be as it was in the days of Noah when he returns. So I guess if you keep your eyes open, well, Revelation chapter 3, I believe it's verse 10, says to the church, "If you will not watch, I will come upon you as a thief, and you will not know the hour that I come upon you." Well, what happens if you watch? It seems like the opposite would have to be true. If you will watch, I will not come upon you as a thief in the night, and you will know the hour that I'm coming, the time. Generally, we don't need a calendar date, as I've said. Now, if that's not so, then why would he say that to the church in the book of Revelation? What difference would it make if you watched or didn't watch? For him to say, if you don't watch, this will happen. You see what I mean? We have selectively taken passages and we've generated a narrative that you can't know, only to defend a supposed rapture that can happen at any moment, just so we won't be here for the very end and have to go through the mark of the beast. And my message to you from this station, from this channel, my calling is to tell you that's not so. You don't need a signless any moment rapture for that kind of comfort and hope and victory. We have it in the scriptures already. You don't have to bend and force the puzzle in any way. The truth is right there. And then finally, we have Noah's grandfather. His grandfather's name was Methuselah. And it's like, so what? Well, in the language of their time, his name meant, when I'm gone, the end will come. Can you imagine having a name like that? You have to introduce yourself saying, my name is, when I'm gone, the end will come. Pleased to meet you. No, seriously, he died 1 month before the flood, true to his name. It was prophetic. Now, Jesus knew all of these things. So when he was teaching his disciples on the mount, and when they were wanting to know when these things would happen and the end of the age, he couldn't tell them everything at that time. They could no way comprehend it all, but he could give them enough so that the Holy Spirit could then lead them into the whole truth, being the great week, for one thing, the 1,000-year days, and so forth. And so he set this contrast up, knowing they knew about Noah. They would study these things out. They would eventually make all of the divine connections. And they would realize that basically his message was, by using this neat little contrast of the 2 days, the eternal day and the days of Noah, was this: my coming will not be something that you can't know about, that you can't see into, that you can't comprehend or understand. Instead, it will be like the days of Noah. And Noah, the righteous who were living on the earth at that time, not only knew what was coming, but they knew when it was coming. That's the point. And so Jesus, basically, throughout this teaching, in spite of what we've been told in the past, the message was you can know. Not you're going to be surprised and no one can know. We're going to see more of that in the next video. And so I'll take you into the statements. And we'll look at that, and why he said what he said, and how we can understand it. You're going to be surprised when you realize that everything is flipped. Instead of not knowing, he was telling us we can know. So I'll look forward to seeing you then. Until then, keep walking with the Lord Jesus. Keep blessing him and praising him. Stay ready. Be ready, because your bridegroom is coming soon.